Excellent work. Okay. Get my gavel up, make it official. And good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Lake Stevens Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is August 9th, 2022 at 2 o'clock. We have one item on the agenda today. This is numbers LUA 2021-0161 and LUA 2021-0207, involving a request for approval of a preliminary plat and planned residential development, or PRD, along with a conditional use permit, or CUP, and administrative design review to allow for the subdivision of an approximately 3.26 acre property into 18 single-family residential lots with associated improvements at 7614 10th Street Southeast. My name is Andrew Reeves. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, who the city has selected to hold certain land use application hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific requirements for approval of a preliminary plat and PUD under Chapter 1418 of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code, as well as for a conditional use permit, or CUP, under Chapter 1416C of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code, as well as administrative design review under the city's adopted design guidelines. In addition, because the proposal does involve the subdivision of land, ensure that it complies with our state subdivision act, which is in Chapter 5817 of the Revised Code of Washington. To that end, I received several exhibits in advance of the hearing that I had an opportunity to review. I believe that number is going to be 21, but we'll check on that shortly. But essentially, these involve a staff report and recommendation prepared by city staff, the application materials themselves, including the various applications for the plat and PRD design review, as well as the CUP, information on the notice that went out in relation to the application, as well as today's hearing, as well as the initial public meeting that was required under the municipal code at the outset of this process. A few public comments that were received in advance of the hearing. I think the original set I received were from Christopher and Virginia Jacobs and Michael Stevens, and then what I have identified provisionally as 21 would be a letter from Grant Kirby, but we can talk more about that. Information on sort of a narrative for the proposal that was provided by the applicant, technical drawings and maps, and then technical reports, including information on traffic, geotechnical aspects of the project, stormwater, and the availability of utilities, and then some agency comments that were received. So I'm going to admit those exhibits into the record. Should anyone have additional exhibits they would like admitted into the record, let me know when it's your opportunity to testify, and I will address admitting additional exhibits at that time. Speaking of testimony, our testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. That's because we're my decision to ultimately be appealed under our state's Land Use Petition Act, or LUPA. The recording of today's hearing, as well as the admitted exhibits and my decision, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. Finally, the order that we typically follow, and I believe we're going to follow today, is first I will swear in city staff, who will give an overview of the proposal and the review process that led us to today's hearing. After that, we'll turn to the applicant team, as it were, to present any additional information they feel that myself and members of the public should be aware of in advance of my making a decision on the proposal. Then we'll see if there are members of the public interested in testifying, and if so, they will have that opportunity. And then at the end, if necessary and appropriate, we'll turn back to the applicant team and city staff to respond to any such testimony. So that's the order we are going to follow. Folks will remain muted until called upon to speak. I promise that if we were all in the same room together, that would be the process I would follow regardless, and wouldn't allow people talking over each other or interrupting with questions. It's a little different than a council meeting to that extent, but I'm confident this group will be able to adhere to that. And again, folks will remain muted until called upon. So with that, I think we can get started, and I'll get, I believe Jill Needham is presenting on behalf of staff today. So Ms. Needham, thank you for being here. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes.
And if you could just state and spell your name for the audio recording.
That's Jill Needham, Jill Needham,
And your role specifically here at the city?
Associate Planner.
Great, thank you, Ms. Needham. And as we're getting started here, did my assessment of the exhibits track? Was it just the one additional exhibit that was? Yes, okay. So I was going to go ahead and make that exhibit 21 if that works for you.
Perfect.
Okay, well then go right ahead.
Okay, today the applicant is proposing an 18-lot planned residential development, or PRD, on 3.26 acres in the R6 zoning district, which includes 3 separate land use applications, which are a preliminary plat, design review, and then a conditional use permit, which have all been submitted and reviewed by the city. The site access is proposed to be from 11th Place Southeast, and associated improvements would include the road extension, landscaping, utilities, and the stormwater vaults. So due to this PRD, there are some deviations from the typical density and dimensional standards that would apply in the R6 zoning district. The applicant is requesting such a smaller lot size and also some reduced rear setbacks, which I described in a future section of the staff report. So it is important to note that a boundary line adjustment had been submitted and it has been approved administratively and recorded to resolve the small encroachment from the property to the northeast. So the boundary lines that are on this site plan do reflect that boundary line adjustment. So after receiving the complete submittal, we did send out public noticing as required, including a public notice application and public meeting, and then finally the notice of public hearing. We followed the standard city protocol as defined in the code by sending postcards to owners within 300 feet of the site and posting of the noticing poster on site, as well as running the publication in the Herald. We held a public meeting on January 24th so that the public could have a chance to convey any questions or concerns that they may have about the project. We had a few different folks attend that had some questions about the design, access, and stormwater management. During the public comment period for the notice of application, we received 2 public comments that have been included in Exhibit 8, and one of which that I received earlier by email today. So this letter expressed concerns about the existing landscape buffer to the south, animal habitat, tree retention on the site, as well as some temporary construction impacts. Since I did not address that in the staff report, I will go ahead and address that now. So as a condition of approval within the staff report, we have added that the trees deemed able to withstand any wind throw by an arborist be retained throughout the development. The landscape buffers between a PRD and a standard single family subdivision, which exists to the south, are not required per the municipal code, and also the applicant will be required to adhere to all applicable temporary erosion control measures during construction. So the staff report does include the conditional use criteria, the PRD criteria, and the design review criteria, which have been addressed. I won't get into all of those right now, just in the interest of time. Proposed lots range from 4,500 square feet to approximately 6,500 square feet with the 25% density bonus applied. Only a small portion of wetland exists on the site, wetland buffer, I should say. So that will be set aside within a native growth protection area. The project has also been shown to comply with all fire code standards, as well as the stormwater manual for Western Washington. And staff has added conditions to the project to ensure its compliance with the Lake Stevens Municipal Code and all other applicable regulations as required.
Okay, did that conclude your remarks, Ms. Needham? Just to clarify, could you walk me through a little bit the access to the extent that looking at some materials? Well, I'll let you explain it. I'm just trying to understand if there already is sites fully developed to the west where the access is proposed, or if those have not yet been. I was trying to make sure I understood that correctly.
So the 11th Street access is proposed to connect to the development to the west. And then there is a public trail that would extend up to 10th Street. So this is not vehicular. This would just be for pedestrians.
Okay, so based on the materials, I think maybe the picture, the aerial in your staff reports, probably one of the newer ones. There is that neighborhood essentially to the west, I'm assuming is fairly new to the extent that quite a few of the other materials show aerials that do not have that development. So that development is fully developed, and that stub road is essentially there and ready to be expanded upon, would be the way to think about that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to make sure I had fully understood that. Okay. Apologies, looking through my notes here. Okay, and then the trail that you described is through the sort of the flag lot, if it were, it's not, I guess, a lot, it'll be a tract, but the little area that goes from the north up to the street, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, pedestrian trail to north. Okay, I may end up having more questions, but I think for now, while I'm digging through my notes, it'd probably be helpful to move on. And were there other members of city staff you intended on calling on before we turn to our applicant representative?
Not at this time.
Okay, so I was told in advance of the hearing that Rob Long would be representing the applicant, so we'll turn to Mr. Long next. And Mr. Long, thank you for being here. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And if you could state and spell your name for the record and explain your role with this project.
I can. My name's Rob Long, ROBLONG. I'm a professional engineer. I'm the principal engineer at RAM Engineering, Inc. We're in Linwood, Washington at 19109 36th Avenue West, Suite 100, Linwood, Washington 98036.
Hard to remember our addresses these days, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah, especially I was on vacation last week, so I'm coming back this week, and I'm a little foggy, but I'll get through it here. So, yeah, so I'm the applicants, or our company provided the planning and engineering services for the applicant, Pacific Ridge Homes, and helped develop the application and submittal materials was presented before you today.
Okay.
So I'll say
Oh, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say this would essentially be your opportunity to present any additional information, respond to if you received the letter that I just received earlier today. Not sure if you had received the letter from the neighboring property owner, I believe to the south, but give you an opportunity to speak to that if you'd like, and provide any additional thoughts, information, detail, or ask about any clarifying points. Now would be the time.
Sure, yeah. I've not specifically received the letter. Maybe the applicant has, but we can get that here, maybe emailed to us, and I can review it maybe through the process here. But I'll give a short little presentation here, and then maybe I'll have a quick second. And if the applicant, they'll probably ping me one way or another to say thumbs up or thumbs down on that letter, but we can move forward with that. But we could probably review that pretty quickly. But I will continue with a short presentation here.
Sure. Do you have a PowerPoint, Mr. Long?
I do not. I just have some notes here. I'll just kind of read off and go through it. And hopefully I'm not too repetitive here, because you both have given a nice overview of the project, but I'll run through what I have for bullet points and maybe skip through some of it too. So, so I'll just run through that here real quickly.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll be giving a project overview for the Dunham Heights Plan Residential Development PRD subdivision for the applicant, Pacific Ridge Homes. After my initial presentation here, I'll also have another team member to come on and describe the wetlands and the buffer that extend onto it, just for the record, to get a little summary there, just to get it on the record here. And the proposal again is an 18 lot PRD subdivision, preliminary plat and conditional use permit. The site is one tax parcel comprising of 3.26 acres. It's primarily rectangular in shape, with a narrow panhandle about 60 feet wide that extends north all the way to 10th Street Southeast. The site is vacant. There's no structures, and it's primarily open grass field. It's zoned R6, and it has a comprehensive plan designation of medium density residential. And I just got Jill's email, so I'll read that as soon as I wrap up here. The site is bordered by other zoned R6 properties on all sides. And again, 10th Street on the north side of our property. And the recent development of Larkspur, which was recorded in 2019, is on the west side. And that provides the public road stub to us of 11th Place Southeast that has been extended to our boundary for access for the public road network. The site moderately slopes from the southeast to the northwest, ranging between 1% and 6%. The soils are classified as Tokal, gravelly, medium loam, till soils. So the project is proposing to construct 18 single-family residential lots utilizing PRD code provisions, supporting infrastructure, including the extension of 11th Place Southeast from our west boundary all the way to the east boundary to extend the public road network. We'll have a short public road terminating with a cul-de-sac on site to provide access to some of the lots. Stormwater will be controlled in an underground detention vault, kind of on the north side of that road extension, kind of on the westerly boundary of our project, with stormwater treatment and quality control for that, meeting the stormwater manual requirements. And then in addition, we'll have landscaping on site throughout, and then frontage improvements along that 60-foot panhandle to the north of 10th Street Southeast, and only a pedestrian connection, as Jill mentioned, will be provided through the site for pedestrian connection, no vehicle. We're using the PRD code provisions that has some bonuses in it, and with our layout or size of our property would provide allowance to go up to 22 lots. However, our project is only proposing 18 lots. Let's see here. I have a whole bunch of stuff about zoning and all this. I'll just skip through it because it was kind of already covered by Jill and yourself. Parking, I'll just briefly on that. Code requires 2 parking stalls per lot or house, and we're having single family units on all lots, no duplexes or multifamily. And we've provided large enough driveways to provide the 2 parking stalls per house or lot. Concurrency, a traffic report by Gibson Traffic Consulting was prepared and provided to document the potential impacts of the 18 single family residences and to demonstrate concurrency compliance. For mitigation, the project will pay the traffic impact fees pursuant to city code, and those will be paid at building permit application. Critical areas were reviewed. We had a critical areas report prepared by Soundview Consultants. And as discussed, there is a wetland area off-site, but on-site there are no streams or wetlands located on-site. The off-site wetlands are category 4, and we are providing a protective buffer NGPA track 997 in the very southeast corner of the project site. A geotech report was also prepared. That was by Earth Solutions Northwest, and they demonstrate that there are no steep slopes or hazardous slopes on site. Like traffic impacts, there are school impact fees and park impact fees. Those will also be paid at building permit for the individual lots when the building permits come through or are issued. As far as school walkways, we are providing adequate sidewalks along the front of all new lots and all the public roads on our project, and that will connect and extend to the 11th Place Southeast sidewalks that go through the Larkspur project to the west and extend all the way up to 10th Street Southeast to the school bus for elementary, middle, and high school students. Stormwater, as discussed, we provided a stormwater report in compliance with the vested 2014 DOE manual. And we're providing water quality and detention in a one of the tracks north of the Platte Road. Due to the till soils, it's not real conducive to infiltration, shallow groundwater, hard pan, and we determined that all the infiltration-based LID measures are infeasible. So we couldn't utilize infiltration on this site, unfortunately. Utilities are available. Availability letters have been obtained for sewer, Lake Stevens Sewer District. For water is PUD, and electrical was also PUD. Fire Marshal's office reviewed the project and recommended approval with the condition that for the lots 5, 6, 9, and 10 are equipped with residential fire sprinkler systems in compliance with the NFPA 13D system. With that, I'd like to thank staff, especially Jill, helping us out and reviewing our application and project as summarized with the thorough staff report. And we appreciate the city's recommendation of approval. We believe the project, we believe the project meets all the criteria, has adequate public services available to it, is consistent with the applicable codes, regulations, and design standards, and provides adequate provisions for public health, safety, and general welfare. So in addition to my initial presentation here, I was also going to have John Pickett with Soundview Consultants, the project's wetland biologist, give a quick summary on the critical areas and the buffers that extend on the site. I'll let Mr. Pickett speak next, unless there's any other clarification questions at this time.
No, I was thinking we can go to Mr. Pickett, and while he's testifying, you can quickly look at the letter, and I'll come back to you, see if you have any final thoughts, and we'll go from there.
Sounds great.
Okay, so Mr. Pickett, thank you for being here. I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
Thank
John
you.
Pickett, Pickett, 300 South First Street, Mount Vernon, Washington. I'm a principal at Soundview Consultants. We do natural resource consulting, environmental consulting, and critical areas. Soundview Consultants did a wetland and fish wildlife habitat assessment on the subject property in October 2020, as well as July 2021. In addition, we also supported the adjacent development in March of 2016, which was approved at a hearing exam rescission in February of 2017, LUA 2016-0071. No fish and wildlife habitat were found on site of the subject property. However, as mentioned, there is the offsite wetland, which is approximately 35 feet away. In the approved LUA 2016-0071, the buffer associated with it is 35 feet. Under the current critical areas ordinance for the city of Lake Stevens, the buffer is 40 feet. It was approved as category 4 wetland. The updated rating, nothing has changed. It's still a category 4 wetland. And no other wetlands or fish and wildlife habitat were observed within 300 feet of the subject property. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
Sure. To clarify a couple things. First off, John, no H in the name. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Just try to spell things right when I can. And then in terms of what's happening on this site, so the adjacent property, category 4 wetland, and when the hearing examiner, very likely me, hard to remember all these things, but approved that project, you said there was the buffer associated with that category 4 wetland was 35 feet, or at least required to be 35 feet under the code. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, and since then the code's been updated based on ecology's current guidance, and the associated buffer, the category 4 wetland, is 40 feet. Sure.
So I guess my question is, in terms of this site and this project, are we using a 40-foot buffer for this project? Okay. So the 40-foot buffer, we're essentially there's no change to the delineation of that wetland that you were able to determine, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're measuring the 40-foot buffer from the edge of that wetland in terms of however much, 5 feet or less, I think it is ultimately in the south, is it the southwest corner of this site has that NGPA set aside to ensure that 40-foot category 4 buffer is maintained. Is that an accurate assessment?
That is correct. The buffer slightly projects on site, and the buffer on site will be protected in native growth protection area.
Got it. Okay. Okay, thank you. I didn't have any further questions, but thank you for clarifying that for me, Mr. Biggett.
Yep.
Okay, so at this point, we'll go back to Mr. Long. And Mr. Long, if you had time, it wasn't a long letter, but you also didn't have a lot of time, and just seeing if you had any thoughts, comments you wanted to share. I wanted to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, no, we reviewed the letter real quick here. I think the record, what we submitted with the reports and analysis kind of covers some of the questions or statements that I'm sure I didn't have time, the name, Mr. Kirby, I think, had submitted, talked about maybe some potential boundary questions. We had a professional survey look our boundary or fence lines pretty close right onto that south boundary that they'd kind of questioned. Mentioned something about planting some buffers and trees. Maybe that happened on the Avery plat to the south at the time that project was, but I don't see that being an issue. The trees aren't planted on our property, I guess. We do have 4 or 5 trees down that south boundary that we'll review and mitigate per the city code. Depending on grading, they're pretty close to the property line. We might be able to retain them, but if not, we'd plant them at 3-to-1 for the code. That to talk a little bit about wildlife and that. We have a very small NGPA that we're creating, but we are providing quite a bit of open space, almost twice the required open space for our projects. So maybe, urban wildlife and trees or birds and things like that could hang out there. But other than that, I didn't think there was any questions on that letter. We don't have any other questions or comments to add to that letter.
Sure. Okay. And in terms of the open space, the bulk of the open space is in the panhandle. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. The panhandle and the kind of rec area there in the stormwater detention area, which is all underground. So fairly open and usable.
Right. Okay. And you addressed the questions I had about stormwater. So LID techniques not generally possible because the sort of wet nature of the ground and then the till. So was this site previously something else? It's clearly it looks as if it was cleared, I don't think by the applicant, but quite a while ago. I just wasn't sure if it might have been a home site or if you happen to know. I just for purposes of curiosity, and you're muted there, Mr. Long.
I don't know the exact history of it all, but I believe our applicant did purchase the land from the property owner in our very northeast notch out corner there. I don't know if they had, pasture, horse or whatever they had in there, but it was purchased from them in that area. So it was part of their full estate there, I guess. I don't know the full history behind it, but I do know it was purchased from the people, the homeowner or the property owners to the northeast there.
Okay. And then, Mr. Long, you had an opportunity, you and the applicant had an opportunity to review the conditions that were recommended by city staff in the staff report?
Yes, yes.
And any issues, concerns, clarification, or the applicant confident they can adhere to the conditions that have been recommended?
Yes, I think all the ones that we received written. Now, Jill, maybe you can clarify this for us. You mentioned something about, was there additional buffers you wanted to the south than what was provided?
No buffers are required between a PRD and a standard single family subdivision.
Okay, I think just the planting landscape B to the north along the road, which
Correct.
fairly narrow, 60 feet plus or minus frontage along there, and really pretty far from the houses for buffering. I mean, it's, you know, several hundred feet to the houses, but we could comply with the planting buffer up there. So yeah, I didn't have any, or we don't have any problems or issues within those conditions.
Okay, great. Okay, and then did you have any other members of your team that had joined us today you intended on calling on?
Nope, I think that's it. Just
Okay.
John and myself.
Okay, then at this point, I think we will turn and see if there are members of the public interested in testifying. I have, looks like 2 names I don't necessarily recognize. So we have an Anya Heitman.
Yes, I represent the HOA board over at the neighboring community, the Larkspur.
Okay, were you interested in testifying?
No, I'm just kind of wanted to listen in and see what's happening next door.
Okay.
So it'd be helpful if there were some site maps, anything like that to pop up for anyone interested. I actually have not seen any of the development proposal. So I'd be kind of curious to know where first I can access that, and second, if it's possible to see it today.
Sure. Ms. Fenrich, are we able to put up the site map? And maybe Ms. Needham can testify and she can explain kind of where these plans are available on the city's website. I myself obtained them from the city's website rather than have them sent directly. So I know they are available to the public, but Ms. Needham, can you explain how a member of the public could go find all the plans?
Yes, so they are available through our Citizens Connect portal. The easiest way that I have found to get there is just to Google City of Lake Stevens Citizens Connect portal, and it should pop right up. After that, you're going to want to use the land use file number. So that's going to be LUA 2021-0161. And then that'll pull up all the documents related to this particular project.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And then I don't know if, I don't know, I certainly am not able to pull up the site plan. I don't know if either city staff is or Mr. Long, maybe we'd have to make him a co-presenter, but I'd be happy to pull it up real quick. But
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern at this point would be.
I would have to swear you in, Ms. Hyman. I'm happy to do so. I think at this point, why don't we just do that just to be safe? So do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in any testimony you give here today?
I do.
And if you could just spell your name for me.
Yeah, ANYAHEITMAN.
And you said you're representing the HOA for Larkspur?
Correct.
Okay, so go right ahead and we'll try to pull it up if we can, but any concern you had, go right ahead.
I know some of the community members were concerned about stormwater runoff during construction and post-construction along, I guess, to your proposed west side of the site that's connecting to the Larkspur community along 11th. And then the second question was, I can see it right here. If there was a sidewalk proposed along 10th where that public trail pathway is going to occur.
Okay, so Mr. Long, could you maybe speak to the stormwater a little further and then the issue of the sidewalk as well? And you're muted, Rob.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I brought up the site plan here so I can hopefully point around to areas. So yeah, we'll zoom out here. Our public road connection will come off 11th here and come through. Sidewalks on both sides of this area. And then a path will wind up through and then to the north. And just along our frontage, we'll construct a concrete sidewalk and curb and gutter along there. In regards to the drainage, we will set a collection basin. So stormwater kind of the land naturally slopes kind of in a northwesterly pattern. And kind of our low point here of the development, we'll have a collection basin there. And then there's basins all on the road And then all the houses will have tight lined or downspouts that will collect it and bring it in here. So that'll greatly cut down the amount of overland sheet flow that's kind of flowing to the west in the Larkspur development here. And then that's all mitigated and then discharged to the tight lined public or tight lined storm drainage system, hopefully to reduce or any flooding that might be. I think this was discussed at the public meeting that we had early on, and some of the letters I know we've read. So they should see a great reduction in overland flow because of all these developments will cut off a lot of this, and then all the rainwater runoff from these lots will be collected too. So hopefully that would reduce any problems that they're currently seeing from the natural lay of the land.
Sure, and a couple clarifying points, Mr. Long. So first off, am I correct in assuming that there'll be a TESC or a temporary erosion and sediment control plan in place during construction to ensure that, you know, there's no detrimental impacts on neighboring properties during the actual, you know, construction that is occurring in relation to the infrastructure?
Yes, the detention system, that's one of the first things that goes in a hole in this area or excavation pit here. Diversion berms will be routed to that area, and then silt fence that will also be in and installed along the downstream boundary will help mitigate any construction stormwater runoff.
Okay, and then in terms of the sidewalk, if you're able to go north, I guess you don't own the applicant does not own the property directly to the east and west, and so unfortunately I think we'll have some gaps, but the idea is that when those properties, if they were to develop in the future, those property owners would be responsible for filling in the gaps in those sidewalks. Is that your understanding of the situation?
Yes, correct.
But you are doing the required sort of sidewalk, curb and gutter along 10th Street Southeast for the small portion of the property that the applicant owns. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Wong. So with that, we had one other name here.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Ms. Hyman. And the other name I see is, I apologize, but I'll say Kelly Schwasha. Probably butchered that.
Kelly's with Pacific Ridge Home. She's the applicant representative here too. So
Kelly's with your group. Okay,
yes.
So I believe then that would be all the members of the public that we have here. So at this point, I'll go back to Jill Needham to see if city staff has any final thoughts or comments they wanted to share.
Not at this time.
Okay, great. So then ultimately, I believe the number of exhibits we settled on is 21, to the extent that I will make the letter today from Grant Kirby, number 21. And let's see. Oh, sorry, I did have one other question, Ms. Needham. Ultimately, if Mr. Long is the better person to ask to, there were multiple numbers that were used in terms of the acreage. Do we have a number people would prefer? I think I had 3.47, 3.44, and 3.26 is what I settled on in the staff report. But do we have a sort of agreed upon number in terms of the size of the site?
I do believe that 3.26 is the adjusted acreage.
Is that after the BLA?
LA, correct.
Okay. And then can you just very quickly touch on the BLA, because just so that I'm fully understand kind of where it occurred and how that worked.
Yeah, so that was submitted a while ago. It's already recorded at the Snohomish County Recorder's Office. This was for some non-structural improvements that are on the lot to the northeast.
To the northeast, okay. Okay, so it didn't involve Larkspur or any of the nearby communities. It's that larger property there. Is that right? Okay, and then corrected my sort of explanation that the property to the northeast and northwest ultimately were those properties to be developed. It would be their responsibility to fill in the gaps, as it were, in terms of the sidewalks, et cetera, to the north. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, great. With that, then, I believe I have all the information that I will need in order to make a decision on the proposal. So it is my intent to take under consideration the exhibits that were admitted into the record and the testimony that I heard here today, and produce a decision on this matter here in the next 10 business days. So with that, I think we can end our hearing, and I will say there are some new members of staff in the room there. For folks not of city staff, if I was hoping if folks will sign off, I was going to just introduce myself and see if these folks that are new to the city had questions, not about this project, but about the process, hearing examiner process in general. While we have them there, I think that would be easy. So that would be my plan. So we'll stop the recording, but I thank everyone for participating, and we'll get the decision